Hi, everybody. This is Liz Koch. I'm a somatic educator. My website's Core Awareness. And I know many of you know my work around the psoas. And I reached out to Krista Jarrard because I wanted a conversation around what is going on for myself, for others, in regard to our ability to stand up to all the things that are happening in the world and in our lives right now. And how do we best do that? What does it take? Krista called it fortitude. And so we're finding our fortitude to stand in our strength. And that's what our conversation is about today. So hi, Krista.
Hi, Liz. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be connecting with you in this way and others that are listening. Just a brief bit about me. I am Krista Jarrard with the Center for Systemic Healing. And I've been working with our embodied ancestral inheritance through the field of family constellations for about 18 years now. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today and just seeing how we can support a better, this current unfolding of how things are and how we want to really show up differently, more potent to make our contribution to this time.
Yeah. So my work is a lot about the somatic piece, the sensory animal body showing up in the animal world is about really standing your ground in a way, being seen. Mm-hmm. And what I notice for people is that a lot of times I'm watching what I see as turning away or looking down or hoping something will go away or disappearing or and so that was partly why I called and talked to you, was I wanted to know what you understood about that, because to me, all of those are part of the fear response. It's part of the freeze mode. And in our inability to be responsive, to be resilient, to be, to really be, to be able to participate. I saw it as something bigger, and you led me into, especially here in the United States, there's what's going on right now, and you led me into a bigger picture of both what's happening in the United States and what's happening to people around the world.
Yeah. It's such an extraordinary time. It feels like an unprecedented time, and we are all doing the best we can. So from my experience, it's so interesting to hear you talk about what you observe. And of course, that's definitely what I observe as well. I observe it out in the world. And we've been observing that in our work with the family constellation work as well, that the same thing, that when something becomes too much, we have to do whatever it takes to continue and survive. And right now, so much of the way that looks is, the way that's showing up is by not looking, mm-hmm. is by turning our back or turning to distractions. So people may be standing, but they're kind of standing from a place of disassociation and distraction, and not really fully present with what is.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the things, because I was talking about showing up, and you said, well, before you can begin to show up, you've got to stand up. So I love that, because to me, standing up is about getting in your bones. It's about feeling the earth and the vibration of the earth and letting the earth actually support the standing. So that's about integrity. It's about core integrity. You have a different take on standing. So let's talk about standing up.
Well, and I totally agree with everything you say, and I work with that as well. That first people have to come into their body. Even to begin to interact with someone, people have to come into their body and breathe. in our work, we're what I'm in touch with is what we're carrying that is not actually ours to carry. So people have their own personal experience, but of course, as you and I know, there is a greater field of belonging that we're connected to. And so it's this ancestral field that carries on and moves through us. And it can show up in our lives in many ways. So in the actual constellation process, we'll see when something becomes too much, a person literally goes down with the dead. And it's part of the journey of reconnecting to that strength that brings people back up and present.
Yeah, so that's the fortitude piece, right? Is the ability. So what happens when you're down on the ground? You're overwhelmed, you're feeling despondent, you're feeling this heaviness. What then?
What then? What I would offer is a missing piece. There's when we find ourselves down there, we look for whatever way it is to get out. And I think a missing piece that's really huge in this country is that we're disconnected. We're disconnected from our source point. So
and that's, you've talked about to me. You've talked to me. I'm laughing because we've tried this a couple times. Just so people know what the inside joke is. But we've talked about this idea of America in particular, the United States in particular. Right now, it is a time when many people are down and down in the ancestral, and there is a disconnect. So whether that's a spiritual disconnect or a literal nervous system, which I think it's always about the nervous system, energetic disconnect. Tell everybody what you understand about this moment in time in America and why such a disconnect, because this is a reenactment in many ways of how, many ththings that are going on are reenactment. So what's essential right now about this moment in the United States for all of us?
There's something that I've been observing through this work, because I'm always looking at the larger whole, and I'm working with clients in this country. I do work with clients outside of the country, but what makes us different? And one thing that makes this country different and unique is that unless we're indigenous, everyone came from somewhere else. And just that journey of leaving and not looking back is a separation, and usually a severing of ties. And so just like when you cut the umbilical cord, we're cut off from what supported us when we were in our homeland, even if when we were in our homeland was horrific. And that's what, that happens a lot, because people don't leave if things are really great. They stay. Right. So this country is about leaving and not looking back.
Wow.
And always that's a source for depletion. It's not a source for connection. So
is it about turning around? Like when I think of it as a somatic expression, I'm down on the ground. I'm not able to get up. I'm not standing my ground. I'm not speaking my truth. I'm not maybe participating because it seems overwhelming, or I'm not even sure why I'm disassociated. So let's talk about that moment, and what are some of the things you notice about that?
Well,
how do people reconnect?
Right. Well, one thing is we're trying to do this all ourselves. Mm-hmm. You're using the word.
We feel lonely. We feel lonely about it, right? We feel isolated.
We're trying to do something that is connected to much more than us personally. so we can have our own personal experience. But when we're stepping into a really large time as what we are, this is bigger than us. And so if we imagine that our ancestors left, I don't need you, I'm going to do it my own way, I'm seeking freedom, and I'm off in this direction,
or I'm leaving something that's horrendous,
I'm leaving behind, then that's kind of historically what's been there. And now our history is catching up with us. It's showing up, it's coming to light. This doesn't surprise me. This doesn't surprise me because in other countries, the past is more like right in your face.
Right.
Here, we've had the luxury of being separate, of, World War I, World War II, off of our shores, and the wars that followed. So we have a luxury here in this country that other countries don't. And that's part of this disconnection. So just understanding that, I think, is huge, as far as like, it's not all me, it's bigger than me.
Yeah.
And there's something I can connect to that can give me support with.
So talk about that. Talk about the ancestors, because when you're down, what I hear is that when I'm down, what gives me the fortitude, what gives me the strength to stand up, be seen, use my voice, use my power in many ways, to speak what is in my heart. To do that for many people involves something more about being supported by the ancestors. So
I think it's just an embodied understanding. If we can come to an embodied understanding that we're part of a larger system. Mm-hmm. So not just in the head, oh yeah, that's not nice. But if we think about, how do we feel when we go and we be with a group of indigenous people, elders? How does our physiology change? It changes, and we feel good because they have something we don't have. Mm-hmm. And it's their connection to their past. Yeah. It's that simple. We can't get it from them. We need it for ourselves. And we have it for ourselves. So just this, if we come to a place of just really being present with where we are and connecting to, there is a strength, there is a resilience, there is a wisdom, there is courage, there is so much back there that wants to support us. Just that,
the inclusion,
awareness,
the
right?
Inclusion.
Just that awareness, and then bringing that into your body, and then in that awareness, we can start to discern. This is not all ours to carry. So that doesn't mean that we're handing something off to someone, but it's allowing us to feel what is ours, and what maybe we're carrying that's not ours, in a way that's burdensome as opposed to supportive. So it's paradoxical until we can make this shift in understanding.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've personally worked with you, and I have found it to be invaluable, because the ancestral story does live in our tissue. It does live in our nervous system. It does live in a kind of, I don't know, molecular DNA, field of a morphic field. There's lots of ways to think about it, but it is stories that we carry, and some of us know those stories, and some of us have no idea what the story is, or we think we know the story, and in fact, the story may end up showing up very differently.
Right.
So for those listening, I'd love for you to talk about that fortitude, that ability to begin to work on that, or even just how do we enter that awareness? Is it just the ability to sense ourselves in the moment? And how do we distinguish what is ancestral to what is stopping us right now from showing up? What is so overwhelming? How the bite-sized pieces of how do we start doing this?
Right. Because this is a big time, I don't want to make it complex, but it is multi-layered.
Yeah.
So I like keeping things simple. And so we start where we are, and everybody's going to be different. Right. If someone has worked with you, they might be a different type of client than someone that's worked with me. But of course, I am always recommending embodied work to start with, because we're in our body. So that's kind of where we have to start.
We are our bodies, from my point of view. In other words, you don't get to show up here on Earth unless you've got body.
Hello.
And so to me, when people talk about their body or a body, I'm like, I don't think so, because who are you if you're not literally the flesh and blood that
right.
is you? That is how we got to manifest.
Right.
That we are body.
Exactly.
And so we are animal. And so we are this. And so a lot of my work is about going below the historical story, going into the support that the earth and the intelligence of the earth, and our species is a very strange species, in regard to comparing it to any other mammals or any other, our lack of recognition of each other, our lack of, there's just so many pieces to being human that is part of the historical story that I find can be nourished literally by entering into this field of earth body, of tissue,
earth body,
of animal body, of feeling ourselves in that. That helps to assimilate a lot of these other stories and pieces that either we were told or that we've heard through the lineage or that we are disconnected from. They start to kind of, but from you, you work differently than I do.
And well, not really. I mean, I work differently, certainly, but so we're in the body. Where did our body come from?
Yeah.
So, we came from somewhere. Yes, we're part of the earth, but factually, our parents, our ancestors passed life on to us.
Yes.
So we're disconnected. We're looking everywhere except the most essential place, which is where did we come from?
Yeah.
Literally, who gave us life? Yeah. It's such a humbling experience to become in touch with what it took for us to be here in our bodies in this time through the perspective of everyone that came before, or those that came before, not everyone. We came through the birth canal. We're not an immaculate conception. That's a missing piece.
Yes.
That's that right there.
So we're not isolated. We are part of a larger fabric of being.
It's huge. Yeah. And we're part of a field of belonging. The family has a family consciousness. It is a resonance field of knowing and belonging. And it's holds all the burdens and all the blessings. So it's how we just work with that and transform that and allow us to stand. And then when we stand, how are we standing? Are we standing present? Are we able to bear witness to what is present? That's a big job. Once again, that's not necessary. It's too much for us. If we feel like we're taking on the world, that's not our job. Our job is just to discern what's ours, what's our unique contribution as we stand, as we become in touch with what we can do to support ourselves and our family and reconnection and this time.
So let's go to the, I think this is a good segue to this idea of the ancestral support. And for those listening who think about their family dynamics that maybe they have, you know, left behind for a very good reason, right? If for safety reasons, for,
Sure.
you know, they were excluded, or, you know, all the different stories that family has. And we were talking about, you know, there is this birth family, but then people have chosen families as a way of feeling like they're included, that they're loved, that they're supported. And so this kind of between these worlds, how do we work with that to really show up in ourselves? Because what I'm hearing you say is all of us came to America. Unless we're indigenous, we all got here. We all left something behind. We're not looking at what's behind us. We've left that behind for all kinds of good reasons. And now what?
We have to look.
Because we actually need that, right?
Right. That's what, I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Now what? It's clear that we can't do this by ourselves.
No.
For me. So we have to reconnect. And I'm not saying you have to call up your mother and father that you're estranged from. That's not what I'm talking about. Just become in touch with, there is a source of support that is missing. And that support has been there for humans throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been the trajectory of you know, of humanity. We've had that. So it's paradoxical. It's always, you know, humans move forward and they look forward to new growth and, you know, opportunities. That's the paradox of the human. But there's something that happened at a certain point in time where, and once again, it's interesting with this country, that this country seemed to hold the promise. You know, we were the promised land.
Yeah, but we were also colonizers.
And I'm not saying that that's not it. That's where the pain is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so here we are in this time, and we've talked about that, you know, you were saying America holds, you know, everybody in the world in a way, you know, like what the stories are.
The world is in America, right?
The world is in America. Speak to that. Tell people about what you understand about that, you know, not making America great again, but making it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No.
What are we talking about? How the world is in America? Well, how do you
just factually?
Yes, we're from all over the world. People have showed up here.
From all over the world, there's been something about this country that has called them here.
Or taken them here.
Or taken them here, for sure. For sure. So that's a whole, and there's, you know, there's no, I'm not excluding that. Basically, we're just talking about standing up first.
Yeah, no, I understand. So in standing up, we're looking at a lot of different dynamics, right? So I'm looking at it through what am I seeing when people are turning away or looking down or kind of turning away, not even in that kind of, you know, no, but in a, like, and they may not even perceive themselves.
So it's fascinating for me to see you do these movements, because they're exact movements of how I would describe if someone was standing in a constellation, literally.
Yeah.
They're literally. So,
so that's why I think our work is so interesting, because I see the expression and you see the meaning of the expression.
Well, I see the expression in the constellation itself. Mm-hmm. Someone will stand there and I turn away. I can't face what happened back there. All the family was lost in the war, you know.
Right.
Or I look down to the dead down there. Yeah. So there are a lot of different emotion, you know, core attributes with those movements that you're talking about. but all of it is self-preserving, you know, in the time when that happened. So now we kind of come back to that reenactment as you speak about it.
And the resiliency to move beyond the reenactment. That's what I'm interested in.
Right.
I want this
for
fortitude
me,
or this resiliency.
For me, that happens as we discern that it's not all ours. So that there are like steps. Okay. There's steps. There's connecting into, there's something, you know, I'm not here by myself. Oh, there's something back there. Oh, there might be strength. Yes, there's a lot else that's back there as well. But connecting to just that idea is huge for people. Just that idea I can tell you exactly how it's done in a constellation. In a constellation, we go back into a generation in which something first occurred, probably not first ever, but first occurred, and we bear witness to it there. We be present with what's present. We see what wasn't seen. We hear what wasn't spoken, what wasn't heard. We include what shows up. Yeah. So I think this process of standing up for each person, and you know, unless they're drawn to do this work, is including what's showing up for each person in each step of the way. And the part that I wanted to bring in that I haven't brought in yet is one thing that I notice in that when you know, with a distraction or everywhere other than moving through, there's a piece that comes before that when people feel they have to make a choice of us versus them, right and wrong, and that's what continues that loop. So that
the dichotomy, the polar differences,
the
rather than which in a physical core manifests as right and left side, front to back, top to bottom. Right. In many ways we differentiate, and for me, one of the things SOAS particularly embodies is a neutral core. In other words, it's not about your left and right side. And so when a person shows up for me who has a lot of differences in their body, right to left, it often speaks to their early years between their mother and father. Even though I'm not a psychologist, I don't plan on going there. I actually will often hear or see a story, and if I mention it, they'll kind of fill it in for me, because I see that they can't stand in the very center of their being. And that's about self-actualization. That's the ability for a child, for example, to really show up in their fullness within the family story, which many of us were not allowed to do or couldn't get our bearings, couldn't find our bones, so to speak, and live the truth of who we are. And so now we're adults and we're trying to do that. So returning to core, to me, is the way you find or work with that dichotomy. And I know you work with the dichotomy in an energetic way. So would you speak to that?
So I see the same thing that you do, and I know it didn't start with them. Mm-hmm. It didn't start with my client. It's impossible that it started with my client. Right. So however it is for them, I know that their parents experienced it or worse in their lives, and so on back. So that's what I'm working with immediately. I have a person, and everybody else is there because they are our family, our past is alive in us, and people really appreciate that. They appreciate that it didn't start with me, and it's not like it's not like it's the end all, but it's huge. It's huge when you
It
really
opens up space. It opens up
right.
the ability for something else besides the yes or the no or the right or the wrong or the
Right.
polarization. So standing in this truth of being in the very center of your being from a somatic place is about getting in your bones, feeling the support of your heart, sensing into the heart, and connecting it and feeling this rebound that happens through the earth back up through us. That really is what supports us. And you're including that the ancestral piece of the earth is part of what is supporting us. What
Right.
else would you offer about getting out of that duality and being able to stand in your own truth?
Well, being aware that there is a place of connection, that if we're connected to the earth, if this is, if we imagine that life flowed down to us, we imagine our ancestors as a mountain range behind us, life flows down. Our ancestors want us to thrive, just as we want our loved ones to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's so beautiful.
so then you're standing in a different foundational place. Yeah. And then bringing in this very new piece of neutrality. That doesn't mean that there aren't things to do, but it's a option to be standing in this place that's not right or wrong. That's not us versus them. It is about including everything that's present. Because when we have the opportunity to inclusion is allowing everything that's present to be true at the same time. That's from my book. So
that's beautiful, Krista. Well, okay, so you've talked about this time being very special to me. You've spoken to that, and I would love for you to speak to our potential audience about why is this moment such an amazing time for all of us who are here.
The only way that I can really be in touch with it is that this is an extraordinary opportunity. It's just an extraordinary opportunity to shift and to find our footing in this zone, in this field that's not right or wrong, that's not us versus them. And it's a practice. It's a huge, huge movement, but I can't imagine that that's not what this time is about. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to connect to everything that supports us in a way that we never have before, mm-hmm. and become present and bear witness, discern what our unique contribution is. It probably looks very different than what you think, because we're talking about connecting to heart and soul and being kind to ourselves and just allowing that to emerge. And also to be aware that many things can be true at the same time. Mm. And that
is so powerful to me. That is so powerful to me because that is standing truly in the core.
Right.
It's not about one side or the other. It's about truly being in the core. And in that moment, it's not about doing something. It's about being. It's about just showing up and being.
Right.
And out of that may come a response.
Right.
Sure. But it's and there may be something to be said, and there is movement there, but it's not a reactive movement. It's a movement that is deeply rooted.
Exactly.
And out of that comes something very authentic.
Right. So the conundrum of this time is that it is so reactive. You know, it's like when you come out, it's like, it's like, sometimes you feel like you can't do anything right because it's reactive. So when we can stay in our center in this way, you know, learning to move from reaction to response, that's, it can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And instead of defense, it's responsiveness.
Responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to responsibility. So to me, I think this time is about responsibility.
Oh, wow.
The ability to respond rather than react. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just kind of summing it up, it feels to be that for those of us who catch ourselves looking away, not being able to bear witness, looking down, that is a cue in a way that something needs to be paid attention to.
Right.
Yeah, that even that gesture is an important gesture, not to be ashamed of, but to be curious about.
Right. That's a good way. That's a good way to put it, to be curious about, to be
like,
kind
why can't
to
I look at this? Why is it? I mean, I know there's lots of reasons not to look at things.
There's lots of reasons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
so, yeah. But so you don't have to explain it to yourself, but you have to recognize it as a gesture that has meaning. Right.
Right. And to remember in that there is support that you're probably not connecting into. I mean, we you know, none of us are immune from this. There are times where we feel stronger than others, and that's okay. But you know, it's a movement bringing all of this into our awareness, and connecting in this way, and remembering that we're not alone. I think so many of us feel alone. Of course, that's always really valuable to know that we're all connected in this way. So,
is this a good place to end?
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. Thank you so much, Liz, for creating this container for this wonderful conversation, for this time that we all inhabit. So thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.